Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said on Wednesday that talks with the U.S. are scheduled to take place on Friday in Oman. Now, before you mark your calendar, keep in mind reporting on this has been all over the place. The talks were actually originally supposed to occur in Turkey before things went kind of haywire. Let's recap. Shortly before Araghchi's post on X, Israeli media reported that the efforts to host the negotiations had collapsed over disagreements on the format and other details. Also Wednesday, before Araghchi's post, U.S. President Donald Trump said, quote, "I would say he should be very worried," in reference to Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and potential U.S. military action against Iran. And in response to a question from Al Monitor's Elizabeth Hagedorn, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he thought they had agreed on a, quote, established forum to hold the talks in Turkey. This episode is actually going to focus on that potential role Turkey has to play, or not play, in the negotiations. Earlier in the week, the expectation was that the talks would happen in Turkey and also involved Gulf states in discussions on the nuclear file, as well as Iran's missiles program and support for regional proxies. But Al Monitor's Ezgi Akin in Ankara reported on Tuesday that Iran decided it wants to solely discuss the nuclear issue and only with the U.S. This may have been where things got off track. Now, this back and forth is occurring as Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is on a short tour of the region. He visited Saudi Arabia on Tuesday and held talks with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The two countries held a joint investment forum and signed a major deal focused on solar power in Turkey, and the Turkish leaders said they would work together on Syria's reconstruction. They also issued a statement calling for an increase in aid to Gaza. On Wednesday, Erdogan visited Egypt and met with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Erdogan pledged to boost trade with Egypt while in Cairo, and the two participated in a joint business forum and also discussed Gaza. Ezgi Akin is my guest this episode. Reporting from Ankara, she offers insights into why Turkey may have been passed over as the host for these U.S.-Iran talks, and what type of deal Turkey wants to see between the U.S. and Iran. She also recaps Erdogan's trips to Saudi Arabia and Egypt, including the economic motivations behind the travel, and what it means for the shifting rivalries in the region. Keep in mind, this podcast was recorded Wednesday afternoon, East Coast time in the U.S., a few hours before the reports of the talks being in trouble and Araghchi's post on X. Hope you enjoy. Ezgi, welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Ezgi, as you reported, Turkey was a potential venue for these U.S.-Iran talks, although now it seems that Oman might have been chosen. Of course, the situation remains fluid. But why might Turkey have been passed over to host these U.S.-Iran talks? And are there any indications that Turkey is discontent with Iran over the issue?
Indeed, Adam, journalists in Turkey had an exciting week this week because reports emerging on Monday from Washington and Tehran as well said Turkey would host U.S.-Iran talks on Friday. Accordingly, U.S. Special Envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner were expected to meet Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Istanbul to discuss a wide range of issues, including Iran's nuclear program, ballistic missile program, and human rights situation in Iran, of course, because as you know, these talks will come after or would have come after mass protests in Iran earlier this month that led to the killing of thousands of Iranian protesters. And after that, we see U.S. administration threats on Iran has grown. In the talks that were planned to take place in Turkey, other regional countries such as Egypt, Oman, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates were also set to join the talks. Yet on Tuesday, Iranian officials abruptly demanded that the talks to be moved to Oman without regional participation, and more importantly, that the discussions be limited to the nuclear file only. Oman hosted several talks between Iran and the US in the past, and those talks didn't produce any tangible results so far. Now, Turkey, along with regional powers like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, has been opposing potential US strikes on Iran, But at the same time, they have been pressing on Tehran to sit on the table with the United States and discuss all troubling points in between Washington and Tehran. So apparently, the Iranian side is concerned about regional pressure on what should be discussed or not in these talks. Also, the past week have seen a flurry of diplomatic traffic with several countries, including Turkey, acting as go-betweens between Washington and Tehran in a bid to prevent a potential US strike. Now, I think it's safe to say that Iran's 11th hour push for nuclear-only talks caused some discontent among the regional countries involved, including Turkey, because they believe that Iran's uncompromising stance, particularly its refusal to negotiate its missile program, can prove regional countries' efforts to be in vain, and more importantly, could eventually lead to potential US strikes on Iran. For Turkey, a potential US strike on Iran and a prolonged instability in the country pose imminent risks, starting with a new refugee influx. Because, Turkey already hosts the world's largest number of refugees. But as you said, the situation remains fluid. I guess we will see in the coming hours or days how this issue will unfold.
Related to that, I wanted to also ask you, I mean, what type of deal would Turkey want to see between the US and Iran? We know Iran is reluctant to discuss things beyond the nuclear file. The US and Israel and perhaps other states in the region want a more comprehensive agreement that addresses the proxy issue, the missiles. But, you in Ankara, what do you think Turkey wants?
To be honest, Adam, Ankara wasn't expecting any immediate breakthrough from Friday talks, but instead of progress. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said last week that Turkey was encouraging both sides to discuss all troubling issues one by one. For example, they discuss the Iranian ballistic missile program, and then they solve the issue, close the file, and then go on to nuclear file. I guess the progress for Turkey at this point would be convincing Iran to negotiate long troubling issues between Washington and Tehran, but Iran has been so far refusing to discuss other issues other than nuclear file.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Ezgi Akin after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Ezgi, shifting to President Erdogan's travel in the region this week, what do you think were his goals in choosing to go to Saudi Arabia and Egypt? And have those been accomplished as the visit concludes?
Yes, Adam, as you said, Erdogan paid the first foreign tour of 2026 to Saudi Arabia and Egypt this week. And it's no coincidence that Erdogan chose these countries for his first foreign tour of this year. Turkey finds that its interest in foreign policy is increasingly aligning with both countries and particularly with Saudi Arabia. Erdogan's visit came amid mounting regional crises that are pushing Ankara and Riyadh toward closer coordination as both countries shift towards strengthening internationally recognized government instead of working with non-state actors in the region. This shared approach is visible across Yemen, Somalia, and Sudan. In Yemen, for example, both capitals, Ankara and Riyadh, both backed the internationally recognized government against the UAE-backed Southern Transnational Council. In Somalia, similarly, Ankara and Riyadh jointly denounced Israel's decision to recognize Somaliland. And in Sudan, both capitals support Sudanese armed forces against the Rapid Support Forces militia. And according to the analysts, this alignment could lead into some sort of cooperation platform involving other regional countries as well in the future. And similarly in Egypt, Ankara and Cairo have been seeing that some of their foreign policy interests have been aligning. For example, in Gaza, they want the ceasefire to remain intact. In Libya, they have establishing dialogue with both parallel governments in the country. Economic components of Erdogan's tour was also important. As you know, Turkey is facing high inflation numbers and is trying to diversify its trade markets. So Erdogan was also lobbied for deeper economic relations with both countries, with both Riyadh and Cairo. In Saudi Arabia, leg of the tour, the two countries agreed on a 2 billion investment in Turkey for solar energy, while during the Egypt leg of the tour, the two countries agreed on to expand their bilateral cooperation in tourism field, in transportation field, and on infrastructure investments.
Ezgi, thank you so much for your insights on all these issues, and we look forward to more of your reporting from Ankara.
Thank you very much, Adam. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.